My name is Franklyn. I'm the CIO of Solidigm. I've been with the company for 4 years, but the company has been around only for 4 years and 6 months, so not too much. We are an Intel spin-off. So I worked, prior to Solidigm, I worked for nearly 20 years at a company called Western Digital in the storage ecosystem. So it's been storage for a long time for me, so 25 plus years. Scott?
And I'm Scott Shadley. I had fun and organized my paycheck based on the number of letters in my title. So he has the fun CIO, and I have Director of Leadership Narrative and Evangelist. So hopefully it just makes it fun that way.
You must be the next billionaire.
I wish. I spend a lot of time educating the market, talking to folks about technology trends. I've been in the industry a little over 30 years. Joined Solidigm 6 months after it started, and spent a lot of time on product development as well. So
Okay.
go ahead and let Lawrence kick it off.
Okay, so who is Solidigm? I know that there are 5 or 6 people who've not heard of Solidigm. It's just like Paradigm, Solidigm, right? So we are the pioneers in solid state drives. If you see, we are we are the only company that focuses only on enterprise SSDs. So our focus is only enterprise. We have a presence around the whole world. Our headquarters is in Rancho, in California. We have design centers in Vancouver, Longmont, Guadalajara, Gadangs, and also in Asia. So if you look at the industry, we started the industry. So we are the spin-off of Intel SSD. In 1988, we started, 1988, we started NOR. Again, you'll hear QLC and high capacity storage. First QLC in 2018, highest capacity announced in 2024, 122 terabyte. If you see the fastest drive and first liquid cooled drive announced in 2025. So we are pioneers in what we do, and we've been doing it for quite a long time. So that's one thing. Just a quick look at the world-class leadership team that we have. We did just recently announce the co-CEOs. We have Richard Shin, who comes in from the SK Group, brings tremendous amount of experience working with the SK Group. He'll be focused on where Solidigm is going to go and the growth of the business. We had Shin. Shin used to run our data center, head of data center engineering. He's moved into the whole operations responsibility, and that's what he's going to do. So he's going to focus on the operation and strategy over there. And again, that's me between the HR and the legal team. Right? So that's a little bit about Solidigm. Let me pause here to see if there are any questions about Solidigm before we hand off to Scott. Okay.
Awesome. So we're going to play tag team to keep you awake and interested in moving forward, and we're going to switch the side of the room just to keep it curious. So what does Solidigm do? As he mentioned, we do enterprise SSDs, or enterprise storage. As we all know, storage is getting a lot more interesting in the marketplace today. So one of the fun quotes I've grabbed here from our friend at Dell. Today, 80% of data is in cold storage, but you can imagine the world in a not too distant future where data moves to warm and hot tiers constantly in circulation, with thousands of multi-agent systems transforming. I don't normally read a slide, but it's an actual direct quote from the Dell CEO. So what this really talks about is everybody's seen the concept of a storage pyramid. We're going to kind of redefine it as we get into a later part of the presentation today, but the idea is data is just continuing to get hotter. We have further down the stack that we have to keep it warm, hot, tepid, whatever the type of terms you want to use for that. And it's all due to really no longer kind of a two-dimensional aspect. It's not just speed and density, but it's actually related to the data magnitude in a three-dimensional scheme. So we have the traditional concepts of data richness, text, multimodal sensors, inference complexity as we move into AI, and then, of course, what the type of data is. Is it ephemeral? Is it long-term storage? All of these different aspects of how data is looked at is important to how you store the data. So we're in the storage market. We build products that do things like store your data, but we're not storing them like we used to. We're storing them in different types of scenarios, different use cases, things like that related to context windows, all that kind of fun thing. So at the core of our company, we have two major categories of products that we classify everything in. We have the performance. As Lawrence mentioned, we have the world's fastest drive for a Gen 5, which is the PS1010, which is shown there in an E1S form factor. And then we have our capacity play, and woohoo, I actually have one. So just to be clear, this does not function because if they let me out of the building with a real drive, I'd have to sell a car. So this is just to give you guys weight, balance, feel, look of 122 terabytes in the palm of your hand. So pass that around the room, but remember, don't put it in your pocket, it doesn't work. And the raw components probably don't function either because they don't let marketing people out with real product. It just somehow never makes it back home. And that represents our P5336. This is the U.2 form factor. We also have the E3S form factor. So one of the unique things that happens with storage products, one of the things to Fred's point about the SNIA interaction is because Solidigm is kind of the largest and or quote oldest storage startup, because we're not a public company, we are a part of another organization. But we spend a lot of time making sure the market drives in directions that are useful. So the definitions of things like the E1S form factor, the E3S form factor, were participated in organizations like SNIA and the SFF working group, where we helped other people in the market define and drive those.
Can you say which organization you're part of, or is that something that you'd rather not?
No, our parent company is the SK Group, or SK Hynix and SK Group.
Many of you are probably familiar with SK Hynix.
Yeah.
Where it goes, the size, and...
Yeah, so we're a wholly owned subsidiary of AI Co. under SK Hynix. There was a recent announcement in January where they've spun off a subset of their businesses focused solely on AI growth. It gives us a great opportunity to continue our focus. So we do classify our kind of corporate tagline is now AI data infrastructure for the modern time, because yes, it is a storage device, but as you can see here, we do the basic storage technologies we always have, but we drive it into co-developed solutions. We drive it into the ability to make the rest of the market adopt said technologies. And that's kind of one of the key aspects of what we spend a lot of our time doing is innovation in a vacuum is useless. Innovation with partners, with colleagues, with even what I classify as cooperation or competitive alignment to make sure that we bring new form factors that everyone will use. I could build a whole new form factor, but if nobody wants it or there's not something to plug it into, it doesn't buy anybody anything. So that's a real focus for us, and we're always looking for the next. So we have a whole team that's focused on forward-looking advancements of technology, things that are beyond even the roadmap that we can share with customers, and things like that for what's coming next. It's not just, is it PCIe Gen 6 or Gen 7? Is it just a performance or capacity play? We're looking at all kinds of unique new variables, even new memory technologies that are out there. We can talk through things like that. And then the latest and greatest problem we're starting to see relates to how to keep things cool. And so we've kind of had a three-pronged approach to how the market looks at keeping things cool. Historically, you walk into a data center and you can't hear each other, you're wearing earplugs, because there's fans raving everywhere, right? That's why I call it the fans are raving. That's the traditional portfolio. Even if you look at the drive running around the room, the back side of it has cutouts on it to help with airflow. But we all know with announcements from folks like NVIDIA and others that liquid cooling is now the path forward, because liquid cooling offers a lot of unique opportunities for us. We actually have some research that we've done now on water utilization efficiency, WUE, between an air-cooled system and a liquid-cooled system, because you'd be surprised at how much water is wasted in an air-cooled environment because of the way the chiller systems work versus a liquid-cooled system. But when you get into liquid-cooled systems, you have cold plates involved, and those cold plates work great when you're talking about a CPU or a GPU that's mounted on the board, because it's a permanent solution with a permanent cold plate. But for some reason, even with the advancements we've made since the original SSDs, as Lawrence pointed out, people still find that storage has to be removable. It's still considered the weakest link in the infrastructure, where it's the only product that has to be hot pluggable because you expect it to fail. No offense to his previous employer, but spinning media does tend to have a tendency to break more often than not, where solid state drives don't. So one of the unique things with the cold plate is how do you install a cold plate system to work with an SSD that's still hot pluggable and doesn't take up too much room. And so we spent a lot of time in 2023, 24 that led up to our 25 announcement about a hot pluggable, removable, liquid cooled SSD solution, which was actually shown on stage by Jensen at GTC, because the new Vera Rubin platform, he made a very long comment about how the complexity of the system went from thousands of parts and hours of assembly time to much less because of liquid cooled. Part of that was the co-designed cold plate system we did with NVIDIA.
Hey Scott, what about natural air cooling? I mean, places like Colorado and a few other places around the world, natural air cooling is highly efficient.
We're welcome to use any environment. Actually, it finds out that we found liquid cooling is actually beneficial to our product. So one of the biggest challenges.
I didn't ask that.
I know.
Into the environment. So.
Into the environment. Well, I mean, closed loop systems, all that kind of stuff. But naturally cooled, we have a lot of edge placements. For example, telecom, when you're looking at a cell tower or something like that, they have a more unique restrictions on what that can be. And then, so cold plate gives us some advantages because of consistency of temperature. And then you go one step beyond that, and immersion is the next kind of thing that's also taking place. There's a lot of effort being driven right now. Digital Realty in the UK just opened a liquid cooling data center lab that includes an immersive environment. Unique thing about immersion is back when I first started doing a lot of the SSD work back way too many years ago now, putting a drive in liquid was, I had to underfill it, conformal coat it, NCNR it, and you had to just buy it and hope it worked. And now we have what we call food-grade lubricants produced by various different companies where we can take a standard off-the-shelf product and just drop it into the server. So we've come a long way in the concepts of immersion. It's not net new. Cray and others have done it for decades. But the idea that we can take the same product from the air-cooled to a liquid-cooled to an immersed environment all in one shot is part of the innovation that we've been doing.
When you say multiple fluids, it means oil, it's water C, it's what?
Various different vendors make different products. Valvoline is a partner of ours that's an oil-based product. But we can use anything that's a non-conductive liquid. There's about 6 different versions of liquids that are out there from a chemical component perspective. Our QA team has qualified 2 of those. As far as fully functional, we've done all the legwork to prove the long-term reliability of them. There's still 3 or 4 more that we're working on. And we can send you guys some links to some of that research. So we've presented that technical research in some of the OCP events that have taken place as well. We're very open with what we do from a research perspective like that because it helps the rest of the industry move along with us. One of the most interesting things we ran into with the immersion environment when we first started playing with these newer liquids had nothing to do with the components or the functional aspects of the drive. It was actually keeping the label on the drive. Apparently that liquid is really good at eroding the glue, and so we just found a solution was putting clear nail polish on it. Was one of the first ways that they solved the problem of not losing the label on the drive. I mean, it's kind of creative and low maintenance, but unique ways of solving some problems. Yes?
Looking at you as a participant in SNIA,
Mm-hmm.
I'm really thinking, listening to your story, are the current form factors the right form factors for the future? As SSD is predominantly becoming warmer, they will have more harsh environments. You were talking about telco equipment, which is mostly not in a real ideal data center. We're talking about edge inferencing, which is also maybe in a department store or in a supermarket or something like that. It's not the ideal environment. What do you see for the form factors and other stuff? Because when thinking about water cooling, in case U2 form factor is not ideal for water cooling.
Well, exactly. So if you think about it, the U2 form factor was derived from a 2.5-inch hard drive enclosure. That is the last hard drive enclosure-based SSD product that still exists today. All new form factors are flash-specific design. So like the E1S, when we first designed that, The idea that came for what the E1S was is someone took a 1U server that held 2 U.2s and said, I don't want hard drives anymore, I want solid state drives, and I want as many as I can get in the same space. And so 8 E1Ss fit in the exact same form factor as 2 vertically slotted U.2s. So we started there. The E3S gave us more board space to lay out more components, and it's thinner to allow better cooling and better packing of that kind of stuff. So we are looking at the industry to define the right form factors that are solely based on the fact that it's a flash-based design. There's no other allocation of space for any other type of product to be designed for that. Are they getting to the point where we're creating too many if we try to go down the path of every one of these unique things like mezzanine cards or fun-shaped form factors? It's more of a challenge, but this is kind of where we've settled in the marketplace. Is this E1, E3 class? Especially when we get into Gen 6 and Gen 7, we need an edge connector, not a physical connector because of signal integrity. So you'll see the U.2 phasing out with PCIe Gen 6, for example.
How does the current supply chain situation affect your company?
Supply chain has been fun. As Ben would know and Max would know, I was at this event in London last year, and we talked about 2026 as being sold out. We're still in a situation where 2026 is effectively sold out. We do have product we maintain for people that need it, but we have an allocation process. When it comes to supply chain for all of these types of components and boards and everything like that, a lot of that manufacturing is already slated out and pre-arranged. Some people you'll see will even take a smaller capacity E1S board and put it in an E3 frame just for purposes of being able to reuse supply. In our case, we do maximize the capacity of those, but there are actually fewer components in these form factors than there are in a U.2 and things like that. So, and we do have a lot of in-house manufacturing support. Okay, so that's a quick overview of what we do, what the products are, where we're going with that. What we're going to do now is shift gears a little bit. Lawrence is going to come give you a preview of how Solidigm is looking at AI, and then I'll come back in a little bit and talk to you about how the infrastructure is going to support that longer term.
Okay, thank you. I think this side works better for everyone to see this.
Excuse me, could you
Yep.
please explain again what an OCP is?
OCP is the Open Compute Platform that's a conglomerate from Google, Microsoft, and Meta that is a standards organization or a group get-together that helps set policies and standards for data center development.
Thank you.
Yep.
Some hyperscalers most of all.
Yeah. It's driven by Google, Microsoft, and Meta, participated in companies like ourselves. They focus much more at the rack level design solutions, not necessarily all the way down to the subcomponents. They do have specs related to solid state drive requirements, but a lot of those point to other documents like SNIA documents and other organizations.
So if I wanted to see any racks from Solidigm, there's a no-go, because that's a partner business.
So OCP is open compute by definition. Everything that's published by them is open to anyone. You don't have to be a member. You can go look at any of the presentations at any of their events. All that kind of stuff is on their website.
So if I wanted to buy a Solidigm rack,
I think Solidigm is just selling.
So we don't
I
do
would have to ask somebody else.
OCP
Yeah.
is, if I'm not saying it wrong, is just kind of their set of standards, and then Meta, whoever wants to build servers, they build servers or wrap on the OCP specification. But Solidigm, those guys are just giving that SSDs.
Yeah.
Okay,
Right.
cool. Congratulations.
Yes, and we work very closely with the products that go into the racks that require our drives. Yes.
Cool.
So here's the thing. It was we are going to go deep into technical, but I'm not going to talk about the technology part here. Before I start my section again, I have a question for everyone in this room. It's a very simple question. What do you think is the most important factor for AI adoption and scale?
Data,
Data.
quality of data,
Quality of
speed
data.
of data.
Speed of data. What else?
Latency,
Energy, okay.
real time, latency.
Real time, okay. What else? Throughput, okay.
Always necessary.
Okay. What else?
Squeeze that bite.
Anything else that comes to mind? Okay, let me ask you a second question. What do you think is the most important non-technical factor for AI adoption and scale?
Skills. Trust.
Skill, okay.
Use case and business value.
Use case and business value for Max, okay?
European law.
Okay, European law.
You bet.
What else? Anything else that comes to mind?
Trust.
Trust, exactly.
As you mentioned.
What else? Okay, let me pause over there. As I told you, I'm not going to go into the technology aspect of it. I can, but that's not what I'm here for. We're going to talk about 8 quarters of AI as change management in Solidigm. So for the past 8 quarters, what we've been working through is we are working through AI adoption purely as change management in Solidigm. And the approach that we are following to ensure that our company and the culture can be nudged so that adoption and scale can be achieved, right? So we started off a long time back, I mean, in terms of AI thing. This was 24, in Q3 of 24. What we realized very soon is, and this is basic, AI and getting AI to be enabled in the organization is not just giving a subscription and a license and hoping that everything works out. That's one thing, right? The second one is you cannot treat AI as something which is there on the side. The third one is, and this is very important for me, I cannot, or my team cannot be the single driving force for change for AI. So what we realized and what we focused on is to make sure that the mindset and the adoption becomes the key. AI actually becomes, and the use of AI becomes a habit. And that is not at the organization level per se, but starting at the individual level first. That means the individuals use it and it becomes a habit. What we again focused on is using the tools and the tool set in situ. It doesn't work too well. You have to redesign with the technology change. We have to redesign the process and how we approach it. And as I said, we cannot be the driving force. It has to happen within the organizations itself, within the teams, and that peer-to-peer and the network effect is what we focused on. So it's a behavioral change that we looked for, and the behavioral change is what I'm going to speak about. Again, we did 6 things starting from the very beginning. We know that the availability of the LLMs and everything changes almost on a monthly basis. So right up front, we settled on a couple of platforms. Because for us, the platform is the key. We will build the platform and people will come, so we wanted to make that the foundational aspect of it. As I told you, shift in mindset, it is key. We cannot do it ourselves. It has to be through champions. It has to be through early adopters. And that has to be within each of the departments. For the success, and we've seen this over and over again across multiple companies in multiple industries, a top-down push is absolutely important. The CEOs and the CEOs have to stand by this and push for this. And the way we did that is through OKRs and various other things, and we'll speak about that. When we went through this journey, very soon we realized that the folks we have we cannot span across all the departments. So when we have that situation, then we go to what Max was saying, where the business value is and focus on those as the first area. I'll talk about that. I spoke about redesign, and all of you must have heard this, the dawn of electricity, the power change of electricity and the steam engine, etc. But for us to actually see and get the value of the AI ecosystem, we have to redesign our processes. And we'll speak about that. And when we redesign our process, how do you know that it's working? You have to be able to measure it, measure every aspect of it, and also be able to energize the organization over and over again. Because change management is not just one and done. It has to be done over and over and over again. And those are the things which we looked at, and that's the fundamental aspect that we looked at from a mindset point of view. As I told you, I'm not going to talk about technology. I'm going to talk about what we did with the people or what we continue to do with the people. Any questions on this before I deep dive into each of these?
Did you explain the OKRs?
Objectives and key results. So our company has company-based objectives and key results that we guide, and the OKRs are directly tied, in our case, to our bonuses. So if we meet our OKR, if we beat our OKR, a bonus directly is affected.
I get it.
And that linkage to adoption, scale, and everything becomes foundational, right? Okay. So like our roadmap is part of the OKR, AI also became part of the OKR and is part of the OKR. I'll double click into that. Yes.
I've got some doubts on your point 3.
Point 3, okay?
Because most of the CEO are not technical guys or technology guys.
Mm-hmm.
And as I see in this moment,
Yeah.
it's that they ask to AI, to this overhyped AI, too much.
Okay.
And that means that, okay, this vision, we've got a recent example in the US, which the CEO says, use ChatGPT as you want. It's great. Infuse AI everywhere. Here's the bill, 80 million of bucks. And at the end, he said, maybe we will have some constraints of the number of tokens that you can use per day.
Yeah.
That means that, okay, CEO driven, always need a big sponsor for any project. But I'm not sure that the overall role of the CEO driven will be more a problem than an help to adopt AI.
Very valid point. So I can either answer that question now or I have a detailed slides. You can wait, Bertrand, so your choice. But your point is extremely valid, and I'll touch upon how we approached it. And it's a little bit different than just saying go and use it, because that doesn't work, right? So just keep that in mind, and I'll touch it. If I don't touch it, I know you're going to call me up, right? So next, I spoke about platforms. For the longest period of time, my team...
Sorry, I did have a question.
Oh, yes, Ben.
To the extent you can share, how much is your department, specifically your IT team, part of the actual Q&A, testing, and validation of whether the products work?
We are, right? Because I'll speak about the way we've done it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we are, and it's the whole governance council. There's a council portion of it, and I'll touch upon that also. So if there's any questions which you feel I've not addressed at the end of the next 6 slides, fair game, right? So platform, and this is important for us. We tried unsuccessfully to keep up with the changes that are happening. We know that every single vendor out there comes up with something new. Now, it used to be a quarter before, now it's every 15 days, right? So very early on, we made this very simple decision, but very, very important foundational decision. We choose a vendor for our office work. We choose how we build out for our agentic framework, etc. So we standardize on 2 platforms. One platform for office work, right, where it's connected with all our emails and chat and everything else. The other we built where we are giving the opportunity for the organization to be able to choose any given model which was out there in the public. So one is restrictive, one is open. But when you give those any given model, what we did was we enabled that in a kind of Claude-like manner, but to the whole organization. The objective is very clear that we continue to have this foundational things that we build on rather than going and trying to get everything which is out there in the world and try to build on that, right? So these are the 2 things which we did. When we did this also, like the CEOs that that you were talking about, Bertrand, we did not give it out to everyone. Platform 1 was a restricted rollout. And the restricted rollout was tied to the usage and then who wants more and who wants more. So it's almost like a frugal way in which we grew it. Platform 2, we got it to a place where we felt that it's ready, it's controlled by us, we control the harness, and we rolled it out to the whole organization. So, and it was built, and it is built on our ML operations, so our machine learning operations platform, so it's just an extension of that. So we standardize on these 2 platforms, and it's again the same thing, build and they'll come. Our hope was with this and with all the hype which is going on, in addition to the trainings and everything else we gave, that people will start using this. And as I said, we measure every single day with respect to who's using what and where and everything else. So this is the foundational aspect of it. Any questions on this before I move to the next stuff? Okay. So here's the thing. I can come and tell all of you, use AI. Here are the 2 platforms. But unless and until you think it's valuable for you, you're not going to do it. Right? So that was the key. The idea is that each person has to do it, and they have to internalize that. And there was a lot of trepidation in the beginning, but they started seeing how things are working on. And how did they start seeing? I know champions are not the best looked word, or governance is not the best looked word, but the only way we could do that is by making sure that their peers are using it, the early adopters. And what we did is over and over again published what they did, had open sessions, etc. So the colleague as a trusted role model is much more powerful than me as a CIO or my team going and telling the engineering departments or the operations team that, this is the way you need to use this and this is how you do your work, right? So that is the key. And of course, the behavior was always highlighted. Key was when it happened and it was happening well, we praised it, we showed it up multiple times. Champions everywhere, right? So we were very clear up front, and I told you this, that we cannot do it ourselves. It has to be within. If you see the diagram shows there are connections, but there are a couple of areas where you don't have connections. It's because these things don't work out the way you expect it to work out across all departments. Some departments embrace it and move forward with it. Some departments don't, and that's what we're seeing. That's just part of change management, and we have to deal with it. But what we were very clear and what we've seen work over and over again is the peer-to-peer and the champions driving this, and that's the key.
More or less, you describe that everyone is doing when they have a real change management program.
Exactly.
In fact, it's the same steps.
It's the same steps. What I'm trying to tell over here is, I never spoke about the technology. Proper change management is what's going to get you results. But I'll tell you the other steps forward, right? But the takeaway, Bertrand, is what you got. It doesn't matter whether it's this technology or some other technology in the future. How do you change people? This way.
No, I agree, especially on the point that they have to find a win whenever using it and not be afraid to be replaced.
Correct. Correct. So that fear is now gone, and we can see it, right? But now coming to your question, when we set the OKRs initially, we set it in such a way that one of the key OKRs is that the management, the exec level team, be hands-on. Because if the exec level teams are not hands-on, how do they even tell their teams that this is possible? So that's the foundational view. Sometimes the CEOs just say, go and do it because everybody's hearing it. But if they know what needs to be done, or their teams know what needs to be done, that's the difference. And we see it over and over again. So that's one of the changes. Our teams, our exec teams, had this thing that they have to be hands-on. They have to do this. They have to know the technologies. But more importantly, the champions and leaders within their team knew it even deeper. So when they go and tell, it's not do it. It's here's how you do it. Here's where the change is. here's how it affects, and here's the business value. So that's the fundamental difference, right? But more importantly, tying it back to the OKRs means tying it back to real money. That also was a driver, and we could see that that's a driver that was needed initially, but now we see that the traction is there where it's just the momentum that's carrying it forward. So that's the key over here, the visible sponsorship, because when we have our events, when we have our innovation days and our showcases, etc., it's always attended and the judges are the CEOs or the heads of the department. So there is enough visibility. And to just give you context, when we started off, we had to go and force teams to present. Now we have so many teams requesting to present that we have to turn away nearly 70-80% of it and figure out how we can showcase what they are doing. So hopefully that answered your question to some extent. Yes, Manuel.
I think every change brings resistance. This is what it means.
Exactly.
I asked to deal with it. Can you, tell us how do you deal with it? What kind of resistance did you experience? And how did you consider this in your planning?
So resistance comes when it's a mandate. Resistance comes when the end person who's doing it doesn't know what's in it for them. Because the basic question we all have in a room is if you go and ask someone to, or ask you to do something, first thing is we have to be able to explain why and what's in it for you. So that's the approach which he took. And again, I'm coming back to this peer-to-peer and the network effect over there. It is much better for your coworker to explain how it's changed their life than for me to come and say it's going to change your life. Right? And what we've seen, and this is important, even 6 months back, I saw the video of the same event. There was a lot of questions about ROI, etc. I think those are all died down, and I can speak to it briefly, right? But within the teams, the first thing they have to overcome is the impact to their job. Because that's the first thing which comes to mind, right? But what we see is we see the way it's changed and how they can do more. Within Solidigm, our leadership team is using this technology as something which actually forces us or forces the team to do much more with the existing members.
Yeah,
so we are not.
So just to kind of augment that, so he's the enforcer to the point of a mandate of a change, and I'm one of the consumers of said mandate. I was not the champion on my team. I had another colleague of mine who was a champion of ours, but it is very interesting to watch. And some of the things like a marketing guy like me, like, is my job going to go away because Claude can make a better slide deck than I can or something? But the tools that we're using, he mentioned, and we'll share with you guys some follow-up information, but we did things like you mentioned, AI innovation days. And it was where people inside the company got teams together and presented how they used AI to solve a net problem they were working on. And one of the unique things is we're going to be able to innovate and do things more effectively because we're embracing certain forms of technology, while at the same time making his life more challenging because he made a comment about locked systems and trust. We had a whole presentation one day where his IT business partner to my group was kind of wriggling in their chair because one of our colleagues presented a tool they were using that was not on the approved list for doing work related to work. So there's a lot of things that go on in the organization to drive that. Yeah. And all of it comes back to how do we enable better technology to move things forward, use it appropriately. And to his point, there's mandates. So if there's a corporate mandate to use it, there's a department mandate type of thing. And so it's been a very unique thing to run through it as a consumer of and enabled by this effort that they're doing.
In fact, it's much more complex because you commit or you drive a very reasoned adoption of but all the marketing that we see, Element, Sabalman, and all the others, is this override FOMO problems. If you don't have AI, you will die. That's in fact the message everywhere. That means that because of this FOMO, people are going to AI, whatever, by every need. It means that you open the Pandora box of all the shadow AI that we have in any enterprise. because they don't have do the job to see that this model that is good for the line of business and whatever. And there is no, in fact, real governance, even to the peer-to-peer. What is documented? Today, people is at home, is on a flex work or whatever. I don't see my peer every day. How I have this feedback if it's not as all time documented, sent it to me.
Yeah, interesting points, right? Interesting points. I will touch upon one thing which you said, which I am extremely passionate about. Shadow AI. I embrace shadow AI. Because we build the platforms first. That means our platform is not giving something that they want to use. That's the reason they're doing it. So we reach out to them and understand exactly why is it that you need to do this in this particular platform, and we include it. Our approach is being reasonable. Yes, that's the only way to take it forward. But our approach has been going on for quite a long time now.
I think it's really interesting. I'll just jump in, chime in with a small anecdote. I'm not going to spend too much time on that. So I come from the pharma background. I've been working for 12 years in very heavily regulated pharma industries, well established in Switzerland. It's all about process control governance, right?
Correct.
It's exactly what you described. The whole process governance framework is very well set, but set in such a way that cannot hamper any innovation. Before you start anything, you're already constrained by the tools, by the process, by the communities you have to talk with, and so on. Now, I was in Belgium yesterday, I'm joining a new organization, and there it's absolutely the opposite. Startup mentality. Everybody has a card, swipe the card, do what you need, and they kind of miss that governance part, right? But the beauty in that is that the people have the tools and the stuff they need to build, to create, and once they have a prototype, then, and I mean, as long as they are not starting to use any kind of personal identifiable information and stuff like that, patient data, then they can build a tool, and then it moves towards this kind of industrialization process or validation process where now you get into, okay, we build this prototype, it looks great, let's kind of put the governance and the framework around that. But you need to strike the right balance.
You have to strike the right balance, and the balance for the pharmaceutical might be different from the technological, right? And it's different from startup to established company, and it's all fair. But what I'm coming to is the same thing. I'm not speaking about technology, I'm just speaking about people, right? And to the point which Bertrand made, the thing which we are dealing with now is around governance. We build the platform, but the technology is changed so much that we have to look at the agentic framework, the data security, etc., and that's what we are dealing with, right?
And very briefly as well, the last thing is also the mindset of the people. That's why you said the champions are important, because you're given a tool and you can be given a mandate or an encouragement to use that. But if you have no clue how to use that, the quality of the prompt, defining the inputs and the output that you expect is all going to drive also what is the quality of the output.
And tokens consumption because of that, right? So I'll speak about that. So, but it looks like Max is agreeing that this is the right approach. Is that correct, Max? Okay. Okay. So if I go again to the next thing, right? I told you about the resource constraint. We went deep in these 4 areas, and that's the thing. Because for us, the most business impact is in these 4 areas. We focus the resources over here, we focus the champions over there, as well as the peer-to-peer increase. And this is what we're seeing. We're seeing the most ROI coming out of this in the past 6 quarters. Again, I've spoken about this over and over again. In my mind, it's always people, process, and systems. People come first. Process definition comes second. We've seen over and over again that if you redefine your process, the amount of impact is fundamentally more than if you just use it in situ. So that goes for even our engineering workflow, etc. We have a large percentage of our organization that does software development, both software and hardware related software development. The way they approach their workflow has changed, and as a result, what they can do is change. What used to take weeks now takes hours. And that is over and over again repeated, and that's what is demonstrated so that everyone can see it. But more importantly, if you go beyond your silo and look at it holistically from your department or from the organization point of view, that is what will change the time to market. And that's actual impact. And that's what we're moving towards, and that's what we're showing. Similarly, if you look at planning processes, that's what's going to change how fast we can react in supply chain constraint situations and allocation situations. So that's what we're looking for. So redesign becomes absolutely fundamental. That means you need to know your process, including processes which are not documented. Because whether you're sitting next to each other or you're sitting remote, people do things which are never known, right? But we need to have that whole view, and that's the key. Again, we've spoken about energy. Scott spoke about the innovation day. For us, putting the people who are doing this innovation right up front so that everyone can see it is fundamental. Rewarding them is fundamental. And that's the way we are going about doing it, right? So that's again part of the change management, specific sponsorship, etc. But this also reinforces the point which you made, Bertrand. Unless and until our leaders know what is capable, the tool is capable of, they're just going to say, go and do it, without knowing what's happening. But making this visible right up front and right to everyone enforces that the leaders know what's going on. So that's one point of it. And then this is the last slide, right? We have this proven template with this momentum. I started off when I put it as 4 teams, but we've already seen in the past quarter that 3 or 4 more teams have already picked it up. And they've picked it up with their own teams without us getting involved, IT getting involved. What that shows, in addition to the measurements and various other things that we are doing, is that it is moving forward. So somebody, I think in the last presentation, asked where the ROI is. We have very clearly documented ROI. Now we are forcing that to be actually put in terms of business impact, holistically. That's what we are looking towards. And we are forcing the people to be able to look at it beyond their immediate organization. But I'll leave you with this, right? The fact that we have our own platform is actually being very beneficial to us, because that's where we do all this. I don't know how many of you are following it here, but from June 1st onwards, the spend, the token, it's gone from subscription to token-based spend. And that's a 4x to 5x increase in cost for us. But when we have a platform where we can actually do the optimization, that reduces significantly, 80% rejection. That's what we're seeing. But that's the flexibility we have. And that's where we also remove the shadow AI portion of it. This is just an AI progression curve that I have. That's actually our departments. So 6 quarters back, all these dots were right here. 4 quarters back, all these dots were, or maybe 5 quarters back, all these dots were here. You can see the pace of change once you hit that point of inflection. Our expectation is that will continue to happen as the technology becomes more and more strong, as the core actually becomes context now, right? And that's what you're looking at. But I'll leave you with, before I hand it off to Scott, I'll leave you with what I think is the biggest factor for AI adoption and change. It's a mindset change. It's a fundamental mindset change within the person, within the people, and how we actually make that and nudge our culture along to make that happen. And at Solidigm, we are seeing it happen. We continue to invest not because everybody from the outside is saying, you know what, AI is going to change the world. We continue to invest because we see ROI in what we're doing. We see actual business impact, and I'll leave you at that. Let me pause and see if I answered Ben's question.
I wonder about this curve. It's
Yes.
not exponential, it's flattening.
Yes.
Like a hype cycle.
Yes.
The start of a hype cycle.
So what I want you to see in this is not how the curve is, but the dots on that. So how it's progressed from here to there.
Okay.
Right? So if you see, the key takeaway over here is not so much the stairway to heaven that we're looking at over here,
Too bad.
but it's the moves that we have. And what I wanted to highlight over here is, for an organization to go, or department to go from here to here,
It's hard.
it's hard,
Yeah.
but it takes time. Usually it used to take years, but in this era that we are in, it's taken 2 quarters.
Oh, congrats.
That's because of the foundation we've laid, right? Just keep that in mind. If there, yes,
I was wondering
Frank.
what's your return on token?
Huh?
Can you repeat the question, please?
What's the return on token?
So we don't.
So if you buy $1 of tokens, how much do you get back?
Okay, so I don't see it that way, and I'll tell you how I see it. We have a dashboard that we have put in place. The dashboard covers token spend, license spend, headcount spend, because we have teams dedicated to it. So you can't just look at it from a token point of view. You have to look at it from a whole spend point of view. And even looking at it that way, our ROI is pretty significant.
What, is 10% pretty significant? Is 20%?
No, it's X, multiple X's, factors.
Based on what?
Based on, I told you, right? We measure every single thing that is going on, measure the business impact, measure what is saved from a compression of the timelines, etc. And then a value is put against that, and that's how we look at it.
I'll take it off.
We'll speak more, right? Because I can give you details. I have details, but I wanted to keep this at. There's significant amount of details behind this. I wanted to keep it at a higher level.
Do you create most of your tokens yourself, or do you buy them at certain providers?
Okay, good, right? So most of us, everything is bought.
Okay.
So we don't have anything that is hosted in-house. But what we do, and this is important, right? Especially as we go forward and we see we need to move towards an open weight model. So we have some open weights in place, or rather one in place, so we'll look at more options. But the economics of hosting doesn't work for me yet.
No, but that's what a lot of people are scared of, that the token price will go up. Because some companies will...
We are already seeing it, it's gone up.
Yeah.
Microsoft just released 2 days back that it's not anyway subscription, it's token based.
Yeah.
Anthropic did it on June 1st, right? So we're seeing it. But what I'm trying to say, Frank, is despite the increase, our ROI is not 10%, it's multiple X's. And for us, the whole picture is there. It's not just token spend.
What about resilience? Would it be, I mean, you just told you're relying totally on the cloud, right?
Mm.
What if it's,
So I'll give you more.
You don't have to buy Anthropic anymore?
Yeah, so Emmanuel, I'll give you, I told something right up front. I joined Solidigm 4 years back. Solidigm was a spin-off from Intel. We had 6 months to stand up the whole ecosystem. We did a greenfields ecosystem. We are all cloud-based for our application framework. Now, resilience, as you say, it's a word that we need to take with context. When we have this kind of ecosystem and this kind of balancing, etc., we have to rely that the people we work with or the big organizations we work with will do that portion of it. The way I'm seeing it now is my focus for the next 2 quarters is tightening up on the governance, because that's going to be key. We have developers in various different departments. We have to have the governance to make it secure, and we have to have open weight models included, because I can take so much, 4 to 5x, that's the increase, but I have to be resilient to a 10 to 20x increase, right? And that's where the open weight model comes in. I'll leave you with an anecdote. I know we are running out of time.
No,
I
fine.
couldn't have dinner with Scott yesterday because I had all hands with Solidigm. And the topic of the all hands is which is the right model you need to choose for your workload. So again, using the same mechanism of change management, we are putting it back over there saying this is the approach you need to take. This is what is our open source model. Use this and we'll continue to do that. Right? So that's the way we're building it out. Anything else? Okay, that was the non-technical AI presentation. Now we'll go to more technical. Scott?
So one of the things that Solidigm likes to try to pride itself on is, yes, we make a drive, but it's part of an ecosystem. So we thought bringing in Lawrence and showing you how we're consuming the technology we're enabling is of value. So I really appreciate the interaction with all of you, and there are plenty more questions, we're sure of that. We wanted to make sure we had the appropriate share of time on what's going on. So before I get into kind of the infrastructure part of it, the question for the room, what does an AI data center look like to all of you? Does anybody have a unique spin on it or what they think is stand out about an AI data center?
Huge amount of GPUs.
Okay, GPUs.
A lot of heat.
A lot of heat. Okay, it's actually perfect way, I didn't pay them for it, but this is an example of a gigawatt announcements by all of these different platforms to enable our AI infrastructure. We highlighted in green the ones that are actually based somewhere here in EMEA because we're standing in Munich. We thought it'd be appropriate to kind of share that we do acknowledge that a gigawatt here is not the same as a gigawatt in Texas.
What?
Type of thing, right? The amount of room you have here is not quite the same as you have in Texas or Virginia or California. So it takes about, in the way of Blackwell, when this math was put together, you can get about 550,000 GPUs in a setup for 1 gigawatt of power. That's assuming the GPUs plus the racks plus the storage plus everything else. And this equated out to about 25 exabytes of my drives that were needed to support this platform. So that's what started causing this whole thing about supply chain gaps and challenges. Bertrand, you made a comment about the FOMO aspect of it. If we all think back to the definition of the word sabotage, right? It comes from the Netherlands when they took the wooden shoes and threw them in the equipment because they were scared of change. The sabots were thrown into the equipment. So AI is another big thing for all of us. We're all dealing with it in our own unique way, but there's always going to be some shiny object. And so today it's AI, but something's going to come off beyond that. Hopefully not Skynet or the Matrix, that kind of thing. But when we look at it from a perspective of how we help enable the definition of an AI data center, we looked at it from both perspectives, both from a US perspective and a European perspective, kind of left APAC out of it for this kind of analysis. But you can see that there are very different ways that the governance of these data centers is taking place between the US and here in Europe. For example, 90% renewable, we kind of don't care as much at the moment. So, good or bad or indifferent, that's not my problem, but I can help solve some of that with how we build a platform out for it. And this is a representation of where some of those data centers are going and what's going on with them. And so we looked at it and we said, what are the 3 main things that we can impact with our technology, with what we build and how we enable our partners, customers, and all of us to be able to use AI? And it came down to power, sustainability, and land use type of things. So we're starting to talk to our customers not about capacity of our drive, but how many floor tiles it takes of racks of our drives to go with the GPU platforms, because these systems are growing at scale. I mean, if you think about GTC and Jensen, one rack is actually not one rack. It's one floor, entire aisle now of infrastructure to put these things together. So being able to determine how to help with that, power comes down to the fact that we have flexibility in our products from how big they are versus how much power they draw. The larger they are, the less power net. So we're getting into dollars per watt or terabytes per watt or even IOPS per watt. Back in the day, it used to be dollar per gigabyte. Nobody really cares about that anymore. Everything now is being dictated by a power number first. Even some of the latest major scale announcements, we're talking about NVIDIA buying so many gigawatts of something of a component, or AMD making a deal with someone for 3 gigawatts. It wasn't even a number of components. It was literally had to do the division of, okay, how much does that component consume, divided into the number to find out how many units were actually sold, because it's really more about the power. And here, especially, it's much more governance over that than it is, say, for example, in the US. Met a gentleman in Texas. He's a cattle rancher and decided, you know what, I have all this land. I've already got access to the power. I've already got access to the water. How do you build a data center? He was looking for partners to take out his cattle and put in a data center. But it's literally, he had the golden nugget for that period of time, which was the power. and the water. And so when we start looking at it from an AI data center perspective to the point about number of GPUs, it's not your traditional enterprise infrastructure. We still have a lot of traditional enterprise infrastructure that's being built, being consumed, as we've been building it for the last even decade. This AI infrastructure does have a unique spin on how it's being enabled and built, but it's also creating some unique innovation ideas for us related to the idea that we used to have this hybrid cooling concept. We're going to fully fanless systems. But then when people start talking about liquid cooled data centers, they're thinking about this rack. There's still the storage racks, the network attached racks that are sitting somewhere else that are not necessarily playing that same game. So we have to understand it's really cool that we have liquid cooled here, but over there I need to worry about capacity and power, not necessarily cooling, because I'm not running as fast. The heat's not there. I don't have to have the liquid to do it. But do I really want to stand up a liquid cooled and an air cooled system in the same aisle, same data center, whatnot? And so getting into these lights out environments, quiet environments is imperative as we think about it. But if you look at it from what I care about, this rack has a petabyte of storage in it, aside all those GPUs. And now we've got 53 petabytes or larger racks that are now being deployed alongside these AI data centers. And it's all related to the economics of token context and what the context is doing and how agents are asking agents to continue to balloon out what that footprint looks like, to the point that Lawrence made about it's no longer subscription, because they realized, oh my gosh, if I have a guy that uses 15 tokens to create an agent to go do something, that agent's creating 15 more, 15 more, 15 more. I can make more money on a token. And rightfully so, we're intentionally creating those by way of what we do. And so that's where it comes into play about what we talk about direct attached, or DAS, and network attached NAS, for those that aren't our traditional storage folks. Those are the two tiers that we see that are the paramount aspect of an AI data center when it comes related to storage. And so if we build that rack out, you can see you have your NVL72s from the new Vera Rubin platform. They threw in this whole new layer that they're calling G3.5, also known as the NVIDIA Bluefield 4 STX storage layer. Yes, thank you. And so you've got this concept, and you can tell that our friends at NVIDIA are not a storage company, because they use things like 3.5, and it drives us storage people nuts to call a half revision as something published. It just doesn't work that way. You always have to round up to the final number. But the idea is this whole new rack of storage is represented by a simple fact that there is no way they could have done that without technology like our NVMe SSDs. You can't use a hard drive in that slot. It just won't work. You have to have an NVMe drive. You have to have a very dense NVMe drive. Therefore, 122, 245, E3, all these different form factors to be able to enable it, because these Bluefield 4s really aren't DPUs. They're a Grace GPU from the Blackwell platform moved into a DPU-like architecture. So you have storage plus storage plus storage. So for every one of the NVIDIA GPUs you buy, you have literally 3 different now SSD products that go into that, each with their own unique play in the market. And that's what we're having to spend a lot of our time focusing on. And so I'm like, okay, so I have G3, which is really fast. These guys have to be fast because I'm context switching instantly within the individual products. As I start to expand that context window, I get into STX storage. The interesting thing here is we're calling it STX storage, but nothing in this rack is considered persistent. It's ephemeral. If I lose data here, I don't care. I rebuild it and stick it back. I pull off the archive of the KV cache back into context. So now we have a concept where we knew DRAM, you have to have it, it's fast. We know we need storage because we have to persist, but now we're talking about having a layer of ephemeral, I don't care, I have to have a larger block of data, but I just need a fast read, a good write, and if you lose it, it's okay, it hurts, but I can fix it. It's not paramount like the days if we lost a bit and your bank account went from 100,000 to 0 kind of thing for a bit flip. And so this is the new storage pyramid, if you will, around heat down to cold for our data persistence. And this is one of the things that we spend a lot of time on right now, understanding it's roughly tied to the nomenclatures that we have from the giants in the industry right now, but it's not specific to that. So you have your HBM, which we all know and love. Our parent company, SK Hynix, is making a little bit of money on that right now. They introduced this concept of HBF, high bandwidth flash, which is another component next to the GPU product. It's not a packaged component, so to speak. It's more built into the CoWoS, or the chips on wafers at scale. You have your traditional DRAM. There's this potential concept for CXL to reinvigorate itself in this particular market, so we're investigating that opportunity. Then you get back into your SSD-based storage down here. So one thing that you'll note here is no matter how big this grows, the factor of impact to the lower levels is even more. So people ask, are you still trying to kill a hard drive? And I'm like, no, I'm not. I never will, because I can't satisfy this entire layer. Archive is great. Spinning media does great for that because you can read from it when you want to, and it sits idle when you don't need it. But these 3 layers of storage will always grow at a faster rate than any other layer that you have, either from a cost, from an availability perspective, or from a density play. You can't build a DRAM as dense as a flash device. You can't stack a DRAM as dense as you can a flash device. And you can't innovate at this level of abstraction, if you will, of the server inside of a server of an SSD without having the ability to go to this kind of level. So that's one of the things that we're spending a lot of time on, is understanding these are now uniquely diverging, but can be satisfied with a single type of technology. And one of the unique things about Solidigm at this time is we have a parent company that does one flash-based device that's very, very fast and efficient. Coming with us from our Intel spin-out was our other flash device, which is really good at being dense and get denser. So you have the 2 media technologies that are now in play, and we're the only provider in the market today that has both types of underlying flash that we can utilize for our future-looking products.
Scott, so you talk a lot about disk racks and so forth, connecting into GPUs. Latency doesn't come from any of that. The latency comes from the cable that goes between the storage device and the GPUs. So what are you doing to resolve that?
Yeah, so
Well,
latency related to networking or some form of cable. So yeah, if I go back to this one right here, this is all direct, right? So I'm sitting right next to it. I've got 8 or 4 to 8, depending on the type of infrastructure you're building, SSDs tied to each GPU. This rack here, I've got 8 to 16 SSDs ported into their DPU. The expectation now isn't necessarily the net latency, but the quality of service over that period of time.
Okay.
So we know the definitive amount of time required to go from storage to GPU inside a box. This networking is driven by this guy. So the latency is set by the blue field. We just have to make sure that whatever we're delivering to the blue field doesn't come in waves. We have to flatten it out. So we're not so much... It's a joint effort. We have to actually co-develop it with them to make sure that we understand what they're looking for, because it's not about speeds and feeds the way we used to think of it. SSDs used to claim, look at me, I'm doing millions of IOPS, or I have hundreds of megabytes per second compared to traditional spinning media. Now it's about quality of service. What's your 5 nines return rate? Is it 10 milliseconds for 5 nines? Is it 100 milliseconds for 5 nines? I need to know that level of definition so that the rest of the latency in the rack is figured out by the networking infrastructure. And that's why we have things like UEC that are being defined, UA link that are being defined, and all the fun NVIDIA Dynamo and all that kind of stuff. Those are all taking on the latency play. And so we start talking about that from a scale perspective, and this is an example of if I were to have built this architecture pre-STX with the largest hard drives on the market versus all the fun things that we're doing with all of our partners like VAST and Dell, and the benefits we can get from a floor tile perspective. So this plays really well from a perspective of if I'm space constrained or power constrained, here's your win, plain and simple. This could work for enterprise infrastructure, this could work for AI infrastructure. But because we realize now that it's not really about power reduction, thank you. It's not really about power reduction as much in this case as it is about power availability for the rest of the system. Because for every watt I save, I can get another GPU potentially. So our efficiency numbers are no longer about saving dollars or saving watts. It's about, I can give you 50% more GPUs in that system, which, by the way, I've accounted for in my math when I talk about it from a rack level perspective of the storage. So our economics of how we talk about it, the TCO concept, is really no longer as paramount. Yes, TCO matters when it comes from a purchasing and a contract and things like that, but really it's more about efficient use of the system. Which products you put in it directly impact the overall net power consumption and water utilization and things like that.
In my very ignorant way, I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
This sounds great, brilliant, especially to me. But what kind of holes will the competition find here? Because not everyone is doing things the same way, right? So would if a competitor were in the room, someone who's not doing things this way, what kind of holes would they find and how would we address them?
So in the AI infrastructure, actually right now, it's pretty well defined on where you can play, right? So we have these 4 layers, G, 1, 2, 3, 3.5, and 4, so 5 layers, that are defined right now by the giants in the industry for AI data centers, NVIDIA. From our perspective, the holes are these things that people are looking at that are not just a traditional drive if you make a drive. So if I look at my parent company makes memory and storage products, and so they're currently focused up here because they get a lot of effort based around their fact that they've talked about growing their wafer count for DRAM. Micron's talked about their wafer count for DRAM. Storage has historically always just been overlooked as a technology. It's I have to have it, I get it, but it's not the case anymore. You actually have to design around the storage products. So, for example, when this new 3.5 layer got thrown out, there was an assumption by the industry that only one product could ever work for that. And some of our competition is focused on that one product for that one solution. We took it back and said, no, we're going to look at it differently and say, can we make the right answer to the problem by way of whatever product's appropriate? So the challenge right now for us in the industry and what a lot of our competition is dealing with is, if you look at it as it's a drive that is just a drive, and you don't try to answer the question in a way of solving the solution issue, you're never going to find the right product. Because we've educated all of you and all of our customers very heavily on what a flash drive can and can't do. And so people have made assumptions on what can go where based on that.
Yeah, if I can jump on that, maybe looking at the current situation, which is scarcity of drives, memory, other resources, GPUs, whatever, the fact that it's super expensive and so on, the architectural discussion is still very important, eminently important, but who's the right audience for that? Because this is not stuff that is, let's say, I mean, it is theoretically relevant for anyone who wants to consume those resources and build their cluster and so on, but who has the money to build that at the moment? Because most of that goes towards the big providers, the big cloud providers, those who have the money and the power to get that into their data center, right? So is that a discussion that is relevant, maybe for very, very large enterprises that still have the ability to get that? Or is it more relevant where you're trying to convince the big cloud providers of why you should get Solidigm SSDs and get that into their architecture versus going to buy somewhere else?
Yeah.
I don't know if that is relevant or not, but looking at the trends currently.
So to your point, one of the new classifications of companies is this concept of neo-cloud, because they're the new cloud guys, right? This is things like CoreWeave, Nebius here in EMEA, and others that are getting that dollars from the investors to spend on the products and the platforms, i.e. the very first NVL to go live was through CoreWeave. We do spend a lot of time talking to all of them. So one of the challenges we run into is the cloud guys build such a large footprint, and you as a consumer of it have no ownership of anything but your data. So they'll go do their own thing. They'll build whatever they want, how they want to build it, as long as it solves their problem, which is making money off of our data. So talking to them about this kind of stuff is more of a how do we work together conversation. When we go to someone like a CoreWeave or a Nebius or any of these neo clouds, it's more of a conversation of how can we support you in a better way? Let's think of it differently this way, think of it differently that way. So that's one reason, again, kind of shifting to my standards body work and bringing that back into the Solidigm play. We're talking with one of the lead engineers at CoreWeave, and they had a desired change to a product that they thought would be good for the entire industry. And they came to us and said, you're in SNIA, right? Can you help us? Because SNIA requires multiple sponsor companies to make change to a specification. Will you co-sponsor a change of some manageability features in a product so that we can enable it for the rest of the market? Now, we knew doing that would also give our competitors the opportunity to play in the socket, but at the same time, it enabled the market in a way that we couldn't do it any other way. And so having those conversations is key.
I'm looking at your ephemeral memory.
Mm-hmm.
Typically, SSDs, they have a lifetime.
Yes.
Using SSDs in an ephemeral way, how would it work with lifetime? How read intensive or write intensive, probably write intensive, is it? And should I change my SSDs in a very short time? So
it's interesting the way you put that, because that's very well played. If you look at it from this particular drive, when we get into anything above 100 terabytes, 122, 245, 491, whatever, half a petabyte class drives, unless you are trying to write this thing faster than it can actually write, you'll never wear it out. We own the math inside this drive that you can't actually kill this drive in a 5-year window. Our infrastructure doesn't last 5 years anymore, so this is effectively infinite life to the drive. However, there are things that we can do when we get into certain layers like this where I don't have to worry about persistence as much. So all of the background work I do to keep data clean, I could potentially start looking at removing, altering, playing with. And back to kind of Max's point to tie into what you're saying, those are the real conversations we're having with these customers now, is not how many do you need, what do you want it to look like, but what can I do to this to either make it bigger, because it says 122.88 because that's what legal said I had to put on it, because that's the exact user capacity of this drive. That's not the physical capacity of this drive. There's more on here than just the 122.88. And so there's opportunity to give that back. So I'm now giving you, quote, extra bits that weren't available before because you don't need that level of protection. Those are conversations we're starting to have about these things.
Ephemeral, you would need like a different firmware.
You could, different firmware type of aspects of things. Or if someone dictates that it needs to be based on TLC, I can tell you no, it can be based on QLC, for example. Those are the types of conversations we're having with these players. We have one of our partners here that we spent a lot of time with recently is VAST. They have these D boxes, C boxes, and things like that, and we're enabling a lot of that architecture. We've had the luxury of talking to some of their customers that I can't name by name, but a recent 5th movie just came out. Those guys were very interested in what we could do, and they asked a question. We were in the room talking to them, all of us around the table, and the guy's like, can your SSD do X, Y, or Z? And I said, step back for a second. What problem are you trying to solve? And we started down that path and completely changed the story, because it's no longer focused on, do I have to have TLC or QLC, or do I have to have this much over provisioning or that? Which is conversations that were normal a decade ago. Now it's, what problem do you need to solve in this footprint that I can work with you on? And we're having those levels of conversations because our products are now just as important to them as the GPU. Because idle time on the GPU is one of the biggest problems right now, and what's guiding that is the ability to get access to the data. So fast reads, bulk writes, that's the kind of stuff we're talking about, the ephemeral and further down layers. And so we're architecting with these partners like VAST and Dell and others to think at a level above us, how they can push data down or pull data from us to solve the 5 nines problem on the ROI.
And how can you drive scope with agentic swarms?
That's where that next level up comes from. So one of my key partners talked about, he's in the office of CTO, one of these companies. He said, his boss came to him and said, you seem to be having a problem. And he's like, what's that problem? You burned a month's worth of tokens in 3 days. It's like, well, I'm trying to solve this problem. And he's like, oh, okay, go for it. Keep doing it, right, kind of thing. So those are problems that aren't mine specifically to deal with, as long as I'm delivering my 5 nines based on what they understand they need, and they can get data out when they need it. That's really the paramount for a storage product right now. At our level of the NVMe is fast, consistent reads, and then the ability to also take and ingest data quickly as well. But that ingest is driven by the host layer more so than us. So another thing that we looked at, because we're in this current situation that we're dealing with, is the idea of how to get people access to play with our product. So in November, I brought up a thing we called our AI Central Lab. We actually have stood up inside of one of our partner companies, a neocloud called Farm GPU, an entire aisles, or multiple racks and multiple aisles of AI infrastructure. We found out starting to talk to some of our customers, they're like, can we get access to that? It's like, well, why do you need it? They can't get the GPUs. We happen to have them. So we're actually loaning our systems out to our customers to validate that we can do what we say we can do with them.
Are you charging them?
Some of them pay, some of them don't. We have to pay for the infrastructure ourselves. So a lot of it's dealt with this whole concept of collaborating on the results. What does it turn into from a business perspective? Can we co-market it? Things like that. We've co-presented with Vast Data, we've co-presented with MinIO, we've co-presented with Metrum AI on work that came out of our lab. But that also gives it available for customers to come in and do qualification work on behalf of their product, so they can put it in our lab and we can fill it with all of our product. Now, if you think about it, right now a server from an OEM, several $1,000s for a base server, throw in the GPU, another however many thousands NVIDIA's charging for it. Then you throw in 16 of these little guys. These are small cars right now. Right? So actually having these in-house where I can swap them in and out of other people's servers for them to do qual testing is more valuable to them than me shipping them a handful of samples. So it's a win-win for everybody from that perspective. And so this is where we're starting to spend a lot more time about you notice I didn't bring up any speeds and feeds, I didn't bring up any roadmaps. We have technologists and technology focus from the storage device all the way through the solution stack to make sure we properly understand how customers can be enabled by our technology to solve their AI problems. And so we had some fun at the event in San Jose, and we actually wrapped the trains running around down there, and I noticed all the trains running through here, so I thought it'd be a fun graphic to tie a little bit in. If you aren't thinking about data storage, you aren't taking AI seriously. That's kind of our new tagline. So for every GPU Jensen wants to sell you, he still needs dozens, if not more, of product from someone like myself. So we gave you a little bit about who we are, what we do. We gave you quite a bit of information about how we're actually enabling AI. And then hopefully gave you a good idea what the infrastructure impacts are, what we're up to, and how we're trying to help support and drive that. And with that, any last minute questions for either of us before we wrap it up?
Just a small one. I think some years ago you got rid of your consumer products. Can you tell us when you did that?
So as Lawrence mentioned,
this was way before the AI era, right? You didn't do the micro move.
So we're a 4.5-year-old company. We needed to make sure we had the right focus, the linear focus. We have a parent company that had a very effective consumer products line. And so we decided to draw some division there, and they've consumed and will continue to provide the consumer family of products based on our technology while we get this nice focus on enterprise and therefore AI for enterprise. So it was a strategic decision based on size, effort, and direction, and the fact that we weren't leaving people in the lurch because they had access to the products from our parent company.
So AI was the reason this time?
It wasn't specifically the reason, no.
Okay.
Any other questions? Has anyone who wanted a picture of the drive taken one, or shall we pass it round again?
Pass it around again.
Sure. Did you need it? Whoever would like to see it. So, again, we'd like to thank you for letting us come. This is really great opportunity for us. As a storage provider, we don't tend to get as much limelight. You're hearing from and are going to hear from some of our partners as well in the way of Scality, Veeam, and the like. So we appreciate your time and spending it with us for a little bit.
Yep. Again, you'll get a copy of the slides, you'll get a copy of the video presentation. If you have any questions for this guys after the event, ask us and we'll put you in touch.
Yep.
Bertrand, do you have another question?
Yeah, in fact, there is a SSD, it's like all the other disks. It's physically limited.
Can I take a picture?
And what will be your pathway or your following to have mounted at the same time capacity and performance? Do you will see FLC or what?
So things like it's FLC, PLC, penta-level is also another term used for that, is the follow-on or could be the follow-on to QLC. We're looking at many different innovative ideas there. We showcased just a few short years ago a prototype of a PLC device, so it's on our innovation roadmap. We have a number of different things we're looking at related to that, whether it be front-end related, back-end related, or even at just the silicon level. So.